You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
Are your accounts one of those necessary evils that always seems to fall to the bottom of the heap because you've got so many other things going on, and getting in and, reconciling those transactions in your account system is definitely not the most fun thing that you feel like you should be doing? Well, today's episode is all about the transformative effect that you may feel and the impact it can have on your business and even your business success and results simply by having your accounts up to date. We're going to dive into what this is, what it means, and also help to remove some of the barriers that are making it so hard for you to keep your accounts up to date and have them in order. So stay tuned. I know you're going to absolutely love this one. It's right up my alley with making things simple, making them easier, and getting the benefit from it. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration.
Today, my very special guest is the lovely Malisa Clarence. Now, she's the founder of AskHub, but she's also a bookkeeper with well over 20 years experience. And she brings us a wealth of her knowledge and also understanding of running a small business and really how challenging it can be when we are dealing with accounts, especially when it's not something that we've been trained in, it's not something that we're naturally interested in or maybe have a natural tendency towards. So in this conversation, we're diving into Malisa's experience and the things that she can pinpoint for you that will have the biggest impact, how to do it, how to make it easy to actually be up to date and on top of your numbers, why you even want to do that in the first place. And she has something special to share for you right at the very end. So make sure that you stay tuned for that one. You don't want to miss it, especially if you're listening from Australia or New Zealand. So without further ado, let me play this interview for you. Okay, and I'm here with the lovely Malisa Clarence, who is the founder of AskHub. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast, Malisa.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share a little bit of my knowledge for everyone.
Yes, me too, and definitely a subject I could always learn more about. So before we dive in, could you share with us a bit more about exactly what you do and who you help in your business?
So I have been a bookkeeper for 20-ish years. I won't give away my age completely. In Australia back in 2000, not only did we have the Olympics, but we also got a new tax legislation come through called GST. And I was working in an accounting firm back then, and I really realized that small businesses were going to struggle with the compliance of managing that new tax. So I went into bookkeeping back then. I thought it was a really good career choice for me as a young woman because I wanted to have a family and I was going to be able to, do all of that kind of thing. So fast forward 20 years, that's what I've been doing ever since. And I've had 3 kids along the way. So life has been a juggle and a struggle. And I was doing business activity statements in the maternity ward of a hospital on the birth of my 3rd child. So,
oh my goodness. For your business or for your clients?
For my clients. I was always the last one to get my buzz in. But I guess the reason I'm sharing that with everyone is I know explicitly how difficult it is to run a small business, and I've pretty much seen it all. And so the reason that I founded AskHub is because there's a segment of the market out there where people are just starting out in business, or maybe they've been in business for a little bit, and cash flow is obviously a struggle at the beginning, and they just can't afford the services of an outsourced bookkeeping firm, which is what I've been providing as a service to most businesses. And it's a real shame because they're the people that really need the help. They're the ones that have got the most questions and everything's new to them, and they're wearing 7 hats in their business, and they're trying to do marketing and sales and customer service and all of these things. And unfortunately, bookkeeping is the last thing on their mind. So AskHub has been created to just try and bring a little bit of relief to those new and small businesses that really need the help.
Yeah. And you just don't know what you don't know, do you? So that's the thing. Like, I think that's what's scary about it. If you haven't ever done any sort of accounting or finances, even just understanding what it is that you should be tracking and where to allocate things and what all of that stuff is, can be overwhelming. I even did accounting and at uni as part of my business degree, and I can't say it helped me all that much in the real world. So
I have heard that so many times from business owners. They say, I actually did accounting at uni, but I still can't understand. Like, what are they teaching them there?
I don't know, but it had the biggest textbook, and I do not know what I learned. It was, I think it was compulsory for the business degree. So clearly I might not have tuned in to all of the things that they were saying.
Look, I think the other problem with my industry that I decided to get involved with is it's not sexy and it doesn't bring you new clients, but it's absolutely necessary. And I think the other struggle that people have is that they can have a really good accountant, but the accountant doesn't speak in English. She speaks in accounting speak, or she speaks in accounting speak. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes with that knowledge and that help, because people go to their accountant because they're like, well, I need, help. And then they don't understand a single thing that they've said and they just walk out of the office nodding. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I've had that experience for sure. And it's almost like we're on different planets. Like, I don't know the right question to ask to get the information that I need. And maybe I don't even know what it is that I need, but I'm relying on this person who's got the expertise to kind of almost preempt what I should be asking and tell me things, right? And so often that just isn't happening. And I think that that's where we get such a big disconnect as well, as we don't even know what we should be asking to get the insight. We're just like, I know that there should be more, or it could be better somehow, but where, I don't know. And I don't know how to ask or get the information. So yeah, it is definitely a struggle for sure. So that's amazing. So AskHub is a place where they can come and get answers to questions, or tell us a bit more about what that
so it's a
is.
membership that you join up to. I've created a portal where I've recorded a whole stack of videos if that's your jam. I wouldn't recommend sitting there on a Saturday afternoon watching the whole thing. But basically, I don't know what people do and don't know, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to record the basics. What is bookkeeping? Do people even know why we're doing it, or are they just doing it because everyone's doing it and, their accountant told them so? And then it goes all the way through, okay, well, now you're on top of actually doing your bookkeeping. What should you be looking at in your business? How do you analyze the numbers once they're there? So that's the portal. And then I think really the power behind it is the ability for people to ask a question at any time. We've created a little question form. Basically, anytime you get stuck, you just click on the form, send in the question, and you'll get an answer specific to your business, which I think is a lot different to a lot of people dive into Facebook groups when they're struggling. I see it all the time. And, they get 55 different answers from people. And how would you know which answer to trust? So I've taken that kind of like Hail Mary approach away from businesses and said, well, I do know what the actual answer is, and this is the answer specific to your business. So that's really the power behind the AskHub, is that you don't have to ring your accountant. I've heard a lot of things lately that I guess accountants are really snowed under here because it's the end of the tax season, and you will ring them and they just don't return your call. And you're sort of sitting over here waiting for that answer before you can move forward with your accounts, and they never get back to you. So nothing, I'm not being down on accountants. Everyone's time poor at the moment. And I think they're just going priority. I need to get tax returns done, and I'll answer that question later. But sometimes you just want the answer, right? You just want to answer and move on from it. So
yeah, exactly. And I think it's like when, you might have an accountant that helps you with your end of year tax return, but they're not necessarily someone that's on call for you throughout the year because they're not doing anything else for you. They're just doing your end of year tax. So this is almost like filling that gap in between, where you can be like, well, the accountant's still there. And maybe by even having a better handle on what your finances are and all how you're recording it and everything that you're doing during the year, when it comes to tax time, it's probably going to be a lot easier to have a good result with your accountant as
100%.
well.
And like some of the other parts of it are me reminding you when things are happening. So, FBT just got done. Go out to your cars, do your odometer reading. BAS was just due last week. Make sure that you've got your BAS. If you can't pay it, ring the ATO and, work out a payment plan. Coming into the June period now, this week's message was go and ring your accountant and book a meeting, because you're best to sort of do tax planning before the end of the year, because otherwise once the horse is bolted, you can't fix it next year. So there's lots of prompting of small business, because it is, as you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm hoping to educate people enough that when they do go and have that meeting with their accountant, they do know the right questions to ask, because they've listened and they've listened to the conversation around, their own bookkeeping. And I think, maybe I should be doing that. I should go and get some advice around that.
Yeah, I love that. And even just what you said now, I remember back in the days when I worked in bigger companies, we'd always be just ahead of the end of year. We would be, either investing in some things or buying some stuff, and obviously doing it because of tax benefits of whether we wanted it accounted in this financial year or in next financial year. And there was always a bit of, are we going to accrue it forward, or are we going to get it all paid this year? And I mean, that's the level of my knowledge with accounting speak, but I know that it was quite important. So,
I heard the word accrual. That was definitely an accounting word.
I sound like I know what I'm talking about, don't I? Yeah, that's about the limit. But there is, I think that's beneficial, especially if you're at that point where, you want to reduce your tax and how much you are going to be taxed. There might be some ways of managing your operations so that you benefit more from it than otherwise if just continue.
Yeah, I think it's just, look, at the end of the day, the more that you know about how your business operates, the better that your business is ever going to be. And, a lot of clients that I have worked with in the past have gone and got their tax return done 9 months after the end of the financial year, and then they discover what happened in that year. But we're already 9 months ahead. We're already 9 months forward into the next year. So I think, putting your head in the sand and thinking I'll deal with that later is not going to be good business practice if you want longevity from your business. Sure, your business will survive 2 or 3 years, and then the wheels will start falling off, because the tax office is never going to let you off from paying tax. So it's just, I know that it's a scary thing. People get themselves into a situation early on in business because cash is tight, but the more that you know, the better you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that leads me on to the question we were talking, the whole episode today is the transformative impact of having up-to-date accounts. So you've just been telling us about the more informed that you are, obviously the more beneficial that is. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Like, what is the importance of being up to date, and what are we talking about when we say up to date? Is it like up to date for the quarter, for the month, for the week? Like, what is where? Yeah, let me know what your thoughts are.
I'm a bookkeeper, so I actually reconcile my bank account every day, which is a very new. But the thing is, I use Xero, and it's a great app, and I have an app on my phone, which means when I'm drinking my coffee in the morning, I'm checking payments that I've received overnight from my clients and, marking off the expenses that I spent yesterday, which, in my business, I'm not doing a lot of transactions in terms of expenditure. It's usually petrol and stationery and things like that. So I'm keeping up to date with it on a daily basis. You don't have to do it on a daily basis, but it's there if you want to, because it's like 5 or 10 minutes a day. If you do it on a weekly basis, then you're looking at setting aside half an hour, 45 minutes. And when I talk about being up to date, it's like looking at the bank transactions and collating them. So I like to use the analogy of a filing cabinet, because that's your business. And the top drawer is your assets. The second drawer are your liabilities, which are things that you owe. The middle drawer is how well the business is doing over time. And then you've got income and expenses. And then if you think about that expense drawer, you open it up, there's a whole lot of manila folders in there for all the different categories of your expenses. So when I say keeping things up to date, don't let that filing tray next to that filing cabinet really get overwhelmed with receipts and paperwork. Start filing it a lot quicker, because then it won't be overwhelming. So I definitely think minimum weekly, because then you don't have to spend so much time on it. Now, once you've got that schedule and that routine happening, it means that you can make really crucial decisions about your business with actual figures. So The other thing that I see a lot in small businesses is that they always check their bank account before they make a decision. So they'll go and, oh my gosh, I've got like 10 grand in my bank account. I can spend $2,500 on the new laptop or whatever it is that you're going to spend. But is that $10,000 all belonging to the business, or is some of that tax money, and is some of that super for your employees, and was some of that meant to be paying for product that you have to order in the next 2 weeks? So you cannot run your business looking at your bank account alone, but you can run your business if your accounts are up to date, and you can run your profit and loss and say, oh, actually, I've actually like really generated some good profit in the last month. I can splurge and buy that laptop. It doesn't have to be the cheapest one. I can actually, get something. So that's one reason why I think keeping your accounts up to date is good. The second one is, if we just go back to that awful period of time during COVID, where basically all of our businesses got shut down and the government was handing out money left, right, and centre to keep us all going. The people that had their accounts up to date got those grants quicker than anybody else because they had the figures that they could fill in on those forms and send them off. Now, I hope that we never go through that period again because I never got to do one single jigsaw puzzle. I was so busy trying to do grant applications and whatever. But there will be other things that will pop up in the small business world. There will be grants that you're accessible for that will pop up from time to time. And if you're ready with your numbers, then you can get that application in quickly. So it's not just all about complying with tax law and doing all of the basic stuff. And yes, that's really important. But I think from a decision-making basis and from an ability to quickly pivot to a grant or to something with the numbers that you've got available, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right that it helps you make decisions based on the reality and not just on how you feel as well. And I think, something that I was reflecting on as you were talking then is sometimes we get a feeling of like, oh, I don't know what we think. We usually all think the worst, like, oh, it's not going so well this month or this quarter. But, if your finances are up to date, you actually don't have to rely on your feeling. You can log in and see what's going on. And I tend to find that actually it's not as bad as what you might be feeling. You might just be in a place where it feels like nothing's happened for a few days and that just instantly puts your radar on of like, oh my God,
look,
like nothing's happening.
If you're a business that sells a product, having your accounts up to date is going to be able to give you that knowledge around the margins that you should be charging. And coming into the end of financial year, do you want to offer a sale, and can you actually afford to discount your product? Because there's no point offering an end of financial year sale or something like that if you're just going to lose money. So, there's lots of different reasons. Mostly I think you need to know what road you're driving on. If you're trying to get somewhere in your business and you have like a 6-month, 12-month, 5-year plan, you're never going to get there if you don't know how you're going to get there. And that's all comes back to your numbers. It will be great to have a marketing plan and to have these sales channels and writing blogs every week and doing all of that thing. It won't matter really unless you know exactly how well your business is going.
Yeah, it's so true. It's kind of like the lifeblood of a business is the currency that's, it flows in and flows out, but you need to have some kind of flow, don't you? Now, what do you say that you would see most people are doing? Why are we talking about having your accounts up to date? Because obviously it's something that sounds like, well, that's a no-brainer. It's very logical. That is what we should all be doing. Yes. What is the reality? What are people doing? And then what is the consequence that they're experiencing from that?
I think the biggest problem is time management and just not allocating some of their time to this really crucial function of their business. It's not sexy and it's not fun. As I said earlier, it doesn't generate sales, it doesn't generate income. So I think when you've got a to-do list on your desk of 55 other things that you should be doing, the accounts function just keeps getting pushed down. And I think what I'm trying to advocate for is, I know that it's not great fun to do, but it's certainly not great fun to do it at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night when you've got to lodge your BAS on Monday and you should be finishing off that bottle of red wine. And had you been doing 10 to 15 minutes, every day, or that half an hour to 45 minutes per week, you wouldn't find yourself chewing into your family time or your downtime to keep on top of your account. So I definitely see a knee-jerk reaction always around a tax compliance deadline where small business, literally they have to stop and they have to do it. or they don't do it and they keep running late, and then they start getting fines and penalties from the ATO because they haven't been lodging on time. And then that starts to hurt their hip pocket because you're now incurring interest and penalties for something that you could have actually lodged on time. So that's the biggest lesson, is that you just have to block out some time. It's not something that you want to do, but the consequences of not doing it are far greater down the road when you're faced with a huge pile of transactions that you've got to do. And then what happens is it's so overwhelming for some people that they just can't tackle it. So then you've got to go and outsource to a bookkeeper, or you've got to go to your accountant and say, hey, there's no way I can get this stuff up to date. I really need your help. And then you're getting charged, $200, $300 an hour for somebody else to do it for you. So there is definitely a monetary consequence if you don't keep on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you already mentioned time is probably that factor that we struggle with, because we might be like, yes, I've got really good intentions about this, but I'm running out of time because I'm busy with customers, I'm busy with all of the other things that seem like they're keeping the business going, and this one slips down the priority list, doesn't it? Like, I think 100%. That we're all probably guilty of that. So what are the ways, if someone is battling with time and feeling overwhelmed and just like, yes, I'd love to be more up to date because I get it, but I struggle with that, what could they do? What would be your top tips on how to make it easy?
I think the fact that we're in an age of artificial intelligence and automation is everyone's friend. So I'm just going to talk specifically about software that I prefer to use, which is called Xero. And it has built-in tools within it to really make it easy for small business. So for an example, if you receive money through Stripe or PayPal or something like that, and it's the same transaction, over and over and over again, and you just put it to your income account called sales, you can create a bank rule in the software that just automatically sets that up for you. And all you have to do is go through and click OK. You can set up a bank rule around your telephone direct debit. You can set up there's so much stuff that you can do within that accounting software and other software. They're not the only one. But the more that you can automate the process, the easier it is going to be for you. And I think that's the power of, staying on top of it, is automate as much as possible what the process is.
Yeah. So if you've got one of these systems, it's kind of working in the background for you. And then you recommend it's like once a week or something, go in and just reconcile those or press OK.
Yep. Just click OK. Just click OK all day long. Yeah. Look, I mean, it is as simple as that. There's obviously other stuff that needs to be done, if you need bills entered and things like that. But that's pretty much 101 small business. That's all we need to do to maintain our records. And then, the rest of the transactions that can't be automated, they're not that many, really. Small businesses operate the same way. You eventually start seeing patterns of behavior. And so you can kind of automate that and make it a lot easier for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when is the stage that you think people should be looking at, investing in the software and doing this, at what point of their business journey? Because I'm guessing a lot of people right at the very beginning, obviously you start out with nothing. If it's a brand new business, you don't have a system. And I think a lot of people probably start with a spreadsheet.
They do. The spreadsheet is the new version of a shoebox. So it used to be a shoebox with a whole lot of receipts in it. Now it's turned into an Excel spreadsheet with a CSV file dumped from their bank, if they're that sophisticated, or they're in there just sort of typing things in. Look, I think day one, before you even start your business, you should invest in software. There's products on the market that are very cheap and they grow with the business. So at the very beginning, you really only need what's called a cash book, which is basically what are my expenses and what are my income. So, think of it as two different columns, and that's totally doable in an Excel spreadsheet until you're having to type that information in 50 to 100 times in a week, and then it's not doable. So I think you really should begin a business with the software there, because it's just going to grow with you and it's going to set up those really good systems and just setting that sort of memory, or the muscle memory to just do it. And then as the business gets busier, because you've you know what you're doing, you know how to use the software. You're not learning a new piece of software in the middle of your business, sort of taking off. So I actually think that from day one, you should have these software systems up and running.
Oh, that was so beneficial. And I think you're right. It's one of those things that we love to ignore or put to the side. But, what is interesting as well is, aside from just the logical factors of why we should be up to date and know where our finances are at any point in time, I actually think as well on the energetic side, I hear so many people who are really big into, money, mindset and all of that. They're like, if you're not minding your money, like if you're not actually paying attention to it, then why are you expecting it to flow for you? Like you're potentially even being your own biggest block because you're ignoring it, because you're making it not a priority. And if you do just give it a couple of minutes and be on top of it and actually make it something that not that you're attaching any meaning to so much, but more just that you're on top of it and you're aware of it happening. They all say that actually is a much more positive mindset around your money that helps it to flow better to you energetically, which I don't know much about the energetics, so I'm not going to dive any deeper into that, but I thought it was interesting to share.
Yeah, look, I think people, like, business is really hard. And I feel like even after being in business myself for 20 years, I feel like the last 12 months has just been really tough. Like there's just, I try not to watch the news anymore because every time I watch it, it's just more negativity and more like, the economy's tanking and the interest rates are going up and all that kind of thing. It's depressing, right? And then add to that the to-do list in your brain of 17,000 things that you've got to do in your business, and if you've got a family and, trying to keep everything. So it's really, really tough. Like small business is tough. I think sometimes a CEO of a business doesn't appreciate that level of grit. Like they have other problems in those bigger companies, but we're down here at the coalface. And I think if you could run a report every month that bigs you up a little bit, that just says, hey, you've done all right the last month. You've managed to make this much in sales. You've kept your costs low. Your profit's been X. I think just that little appreciation of a win for yourself is also what's going to keep you going. So that you don't have this like persona that, all you're doing is grinding. It's just a grind. And I'm guilty of that myself. I'm so down on myself about how I think my success is. I'm a victim of social media, of, watching these people on social media and going, oh, look at them over there just like winning at life. And I'm over here in my tracksuit with my, being up for 12 hours or whatever. And I think, we should stop for a minute and look and just go, you know what, you're doing a really good job. And I think that watching your finances or looking at your profit and loss, as unsexy as that sounds, is just a little way to give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, we can feel like things are hard and tough and, be looking at other people and thinking, oh, well, I'm not successful. But I think that the numbers often tell a different story. And so, like what you just said, maybe even go in and look at where you're at. Maybe this month hasn't been a great month. That's fine. Like expand the time frame out. Look at this calendar year. Look at this financial year. Look at and compare it to last financial year. Compare it to something else. Give yourself something that you're tracking. Like something that I try to do is to know, what was my best ever quarter, and then I'm trying to beat that quarter. What was my best ever month? And to know where I am in this current month, in this quarter as well, just means that, I'm not in the detail of it. I do have software that does so much for me, of course, and it's so important. But, I've just got my finger on the pulse a little bit to be like, okay. And then it can be that bit of a motivator because you've got that like, wow, that was a great quarter I had. I'm going to try to beat it. It's that little bit of a motivator.
Get that competitive spirit going.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, without focusing on it and without being like a slave to it either, being like, I've got to, be a slave to my numbers. I absolutely am a person, but it's great, like you said, if you can look at it and actually acknowledge yourself for what you've achieved, acknowledge what you've done and give, make that be a positive motivator as opposed to the stick.
No, I 100% agree. I think that I think when people actually look at their numbers, they get a little surprised. And they go, oh, really? I mean, I do. It happens all the time when I send out a business activity statement to my clients, and I know the ones that will ring me straight away. Like, there's no way that I owe that much tax. I didn't earn that much money last quarter, and I'm like, okay, well then let's go through it then. So everybody has a warped view of how their business is going, and you just sometimes need a little reminder.
Yeah. Oh, I totally love that. So if anyone's thinking, well, I want, really interested in either getting some help with their bookkeeping, or they're interested in your membership, the AskHub, how can they find you, and where do they reach out?
So we're on the socials. So askhub.com.au is our website. So you can come on over. Had a cool little explainer video made just to sort of explain what the process of the AskHub is and what you'll get from it. I think we'll put a link below this podcast with, how you can contact me if you wanted to, have a look at your Xero file or have a look at your file, talk about bookkeeping, whatever. So, but yeah, askhub.com.au.
Amazing. And you mentioned to me before we jumped on this that you had something special for the listeners of the podcast if they do have Xero, because that's your preferred platform, isn't it?
Yes, I do. I do have a little gift for you all. So usually I charge a fee to review somebody's Xero file, but I've decided to give your listeners that for free. So it's called a Xero Health Check. And it'll just give you a report to let you know where you're at with your business and your data entry and your Xero file. And then you've got a good starting point. And hopefully you've been inspired by this conversation to pay more attention. So I can do that Xero Health Check for you. And I can say, right, these are the areas that you really need to work on and get those ones a little bit more polished, and then go forth and conquer the world.
Oh, wow. That is so valuable. So Xero Health Check, it's normally $250 to do.
Correct.
And Malisa is offering it to you for free just for being a listener of the podcast, which is amazing. So thank you so much for your generosity. I think that's a really, really lovely offer. And I hope that some of you take her up on it, because as you said, you don't know what you don't know. And maybe Malisa will shine a bit of a light on some places in your Xero where you can, get some more benefit from.
And don't be afraid. I've seen a lot. I don't think anything can shock me anymore.
20 years, I'm sure you've seen everything, right?
I have. And I think the worst offenders, and I'm, sorry if there's any of you listening, are tradies. They are I love working with them because they're so much fun. But when it comes to their receipt management, it's so funny. I often get a lap photo of my tradies because they're doing the right thing. They're taking photos of their receipts and sending them to me, but sometimes those shorts just need to be thrown in the bin. So I've got that side of the story and then everything in between. So yeah, I've seen a lot in 20 years.
Brilliant. I can imagine. We won't tell any of those those stories. Thank you so much, Malisa. This has been really great chat. And, I've definitely learnt some things from you today. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your knowledge with us. And thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of She's the Business podcast. I hope that you've been enjoying it as much as I have in creating the content to bring to you. So I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your presence and your attention. Now, if you love the podcast, or maybe you just loved today's episode, then I would absolutely appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcasts, scroll down, hit the 5 stars, and then leave me a short review about what it was that you really enjoyed in this episode, or maybe in the podcast overall. And when I receive those reviews, then I love to give those reviewers a shout out on my future podcast episodes. So you never know, you may hear your name getting a shout out in a future episode if you do that. So thank you once again for your time, and I'll see you next time on She's the Business.